So I do hope to get back into this. But I figured I'd jump on live. I think lives do better. Let me know in the comments below, you know, in terms of if you I don't know, I'm learning how to speak right now. But if you prefer, you know, a weekly live, or are there days of the weeks that would work for you? If it's not, let's say Sunday. You know, I'm not a religious person, but I know that many people go to churches and stuff like that on Sundays. And so just let me know what works best for you. But I did want to jump on here, one, because it's been a while, and say, hey, how's it going? Still have a very active Discord, and still do plan to record more stuff, but I'm also focusing on other areas that include, you know, doing stand-up and all of these other commitments and stuff that I really love and make me come alive. And so, you know, that does not mean this doesn't make me come alive. But I do hope to be more active and interactive with you all. So share your comments below, even if you see this after it's been fully recorded. So I hope you're finding your power. That's really what this is about, right? But I wanted to talk about that today because there's a lot of jargon, whether you're in the world of Neville Goddard or Esther Hicks or, you know, anybody really. I mean, even if you read the Hermetica or the Emerald Tablets, there's a certain lexicon, or there's a certain group of ideas that keep coming up, but they're used in different ways, and the terms that are used are very different, but they all mean the same thing. And I think sometimes we overcomplicate the ideas, but undercomplicate the process. Meaning, we just want this to be quick. We want this to be drive-through spirituality. And I think it's a major issue, because a lot of ancient spirituality understands that this is all a process, right? A lot of modern spirituality is, let's do the McDonald's version. I just want the quick one. I want something that's going to get me out of my situation, and that's it. Now, can we do that? Of course. But the mental architecture or the mental framework or the ability for you as a creator to awaken in your power can happen within 12 minutes or 12 years. And that is what I'm about. My passion for doing this is not always necessarily to provide you a quick fix. Yes, in doing all of this, in doing all of the mental work, right, and changing your mental patterns and your mental fears and those things that you've accepted and identified as true, which are limiting, can be healed overnight. I mean, you've obviously heard that. You know, I remember my brother, my foster brother, he had been wanting to stop smoking for years and years and years. And he talked about it, and he'd articulated the struggles about it. And, you know, there would be these seasons where it'd be like 3 months and 6 months. I think he even did it for like 2 years. And then he just fell off. Here's the thing. Do you hear that? Do you hear in the language of falling off? There is an acceptance that that's an option. Okay, and in this, and what I'm sharing and why I'm sharing this, is to get into the terminology, especially that people like Neville Goddard use, which a lot of his is inspired by scripture, just basic scripture, which he did not see as a religious document. He saw it as a handbook to the mind, but not the mind that you think that you're like sitting there with OCD thoughts and you're trying to, you know, piece your way into, you know, getting what you want, because you can't force peace. Peace is simply just the fabric of who you are, right? And the major issue with that is that we got normalized to think that you have to earn peace. No, you are peace. That is the major difference. You don't earn peace. You become it, but you become it not by effort. You become it by remembering. This is why Neville's in several places talks about, oh, well, this shouldn't feel like effort. But the problem is people hear that and they think, oh, that doesn't mean I should try anything. No, he even says in another one of his lectures in picture making, one of my favorite, is that this is like a violin. It's like a piano. You're always constantly tuning it. You're always constantly playing and learning and getting better at it, right? So that's the effort in the sense that you are learning, right? But it's not effort in the sense that what should occur over time is that what feels like effort becomes effortlessness, right? He even says when you begin this, right, this is gonna feel weird. It's gonna feel off. It's gonna feel like you're ghosting like certain ideas, or you're ghosting yourself, or you're not showing up for yourself, or it's gonna feel like it's so far out there that you're disconnected from the concepts and the ideas, but that you keep persisting, right? You're gonna feel a gap, or an internal kind of rupture between, this doesn't feel real. This feels fake. Oh, it's just fake it till you make it stuff. And you have people like Reverend Ike, who was very influenced by Neville Goddard, who actually does argue for like a biblical fake it or make it. Now, I get what he's saying, but really what I want to do was kind of deal with that as well, because if you notice, I'm kind of going through already with a lot of terminology right now, right? This idea of terms that we either use within the spiritual world or within Neville Goddard's kind of opus or like grand works, right? And so this kind of idea, do you fake it till you make it? Yes and no. You fake it in the sense that you are trying not even to convince yourself, because people are going to try to run at that and say, oh, well, no, you don't force it. No, here's the thing. What's happening within the world of manifestation is that it relies a lot on human language. A lot of what we understand about how the law works is very controlled and guided and limited by language. So when I say, well, yes and no, that you fake it till you make it, a lot of people are going to jump on that and say, well, no, you never do. Here's the thing, and this is why I argue sometimes for it. Because there's also science and neuroscience that shows that if you embody characteristics that you yet do not have, your brain starts looking for new patterns and new stories, because your brain can't tell the difference between what you're actually doing and what you're doing in your mind, right? So what you're doing in reality and what you're doing in your mind, it can't tell the difference. So if you start talking about how you are blessed, and you are talking about how life is good, and you're talking about how your health is amazing, and you're like ultra human, right? Then your mind starts looking for reasons why that's true. If you don't, and you simply just accept whatever it is that you're going through as the only truth possible, then your mind will also look for patterns, right? And it will continuously look for patterns. Here's the thing about those patterns. They're just patterns. Problem with that is that when you think of it like that, is that you forget that the patterns are rewarded as patterns, right? So the patterns are rewarded that you keep repeating through dopamine. So that means you get rewarded. Yes, that's part of what dopamine does. But dopamine is also a kind of a ritualistic neurochemical. And so what's happening is the more that you do something over and over, whether it's good or bad, it doesn't matter. The brain isn't moral. It doesn't say, oh, well, that's a bad behavior. No, you're doing it again, so you must like it. So here's a cocktail of neurochemicals, right? So you get dopamine, which is future seeking, right? It never keeps you present. It's always like, what's next? So that's the other kind of role of dopamine. And then 2 is, like I said, it is also something that you get rewarded for, right? It's also included in biological mechanics, which means over time, if you start behaving a certain way, right? And you start behaving in relationship to a certain idea, right? Then your mind goes into, hey, not only am I rewarding you because you're repeating this behavior, but I'm also going to give you the mental map and the biological map of this is how you physically act. Okay, so and that's just dopamine. Now we can go through all the other ones that are deployed, but my point in sharing this is that really what you're doing, because this is all called, like today's called sovereignty, right? Sovereignty is about nervous system domination. Okay, nervous system is where you get all your memories. Nervous system is where you lived out your fears and your joys. And so your nervous system is kind of like not just nerves, not just neurons. It's also a memory bank. It includes all of it, right? And so when Neville says, for example, to change state, he's saying change the memories that you've hardwired into your body and hardwired into the biomechanical human experience, and change those. So you are literally changing your biology, but you're also changing your emotions about something. You're changing your memories about something. Now, when you start to understand that this is all about identity, right? then you begin, trying to ask the next question, which I think is an important one, is what is identity? How is identity formed? Well, and I'm not going to go into a huge neuroscience workshop here, but for the basics of trying to understand Neville and his approach and also sovereignty, is really recognizing that there tend to be three components to an identity. And this is essentially how Neville actually defines a state, okay? Is that you have a memory, you have belief, and you have an emotion. Memory, belief, and emotion. Memory, belief, and emotion. MBE, memory, belief, and emotion. I'm repeating it on purpose because your brain likes repetition. So, memory, belief, and emotion. If you change one of those, the other ones will kick in high gear and try to replace what you did not put in its place. Let me make sense of this because it sounds like I just repeated myself. What I'm saying is that if you change a memory, but you still have a strong belief and a limiting belief, it's going to find another memory, right? That will still encode the limiting belief. So this is why you need to change all three of these. This is the Trinity, right? Memory, belief, and emotions. So you have to change all three of those. Now that sounds like a lot of work. It's like, no, that's not what Neville exactly, actually he did say this. And he broke it down over his work. And I would encourage you to ask when a limiting belief comes up is, what are my memories about this? What are my emotions about this? And what are my beliefs about this? And then how can I begin going about changing those? That's why he gave you techniques. You do not have to rely on any technique. You don't need techniques at all. You don't need Reddit, even though I write there. You don't need books, even though I'm working on one. You don't need those things. You need you. This is what sovereignty is. It is literally taking your power back. Because somewhere along the way, whether you were 7, 4, 23, 37, 73, someone took your power. And that installed a memory of your powerlessness. And then that installed beliefs. And then it was reinforced by emotions. So this is how you take it back. So you choose an identity or a state, right, that you want to